Welcome back to the Relentless Runners podcast. I'm your co-host, Christine.
And I'm Toni.
And we are the co-founders of Relentless Runners. We are an online run coaching team that provides one-on-one run coaching with a team of over 10 coaches, a registered dietitian, a strength and conditioning coach, and a clinical psychologist to teach your athletes about mindset. We want to bring our running knowledge here to you so you can follow along, learn, and grow as a runner. And if you want to check out more about us or find us, you can check the show notes below and you can see what we offer.
Today, we have part 2 of our Bump Runner series, and we'll be talking about pregnancy running. Full transparency, this is our second attempt. We're only 3 minutes in where we had some malfunction issues, but hopefully that doesn't happen. And first, we're going to talk about our Corral Chronicles, and we will also try to keep it concise. But guys, we have so much to update you on.
And Toni's going to go first because we've never let you go first. We're going to go.
Yeah,
it's okay. You go.
It's all about me. So as of last week when I updated you guys, things have been trending in the right direction. And that's still the case. It's just happening at a slower rate. So last week I had 3 30-minute runs and a 60-minute run, which my PT, Lauren, had told me to test that out over the weekend. And it went well. I felt nothing during. I went a little quick and I felt some a little aching after the next day, not even later on in that day. It was still progress because some of my other runs when I was starting things out again, I would notice aching later in the day with even shorter 2-mile runs. And so again, progress there. But after that and feeling that, because I got 7 miles in at that moment, 4 weeks out from grandma's. And so I touched base with our contact at Destination Marathon since, as you guys know, we've been talking about it for months. Christine and I had planned to go with them to grandma's, and this was a partnership. So I was just very transparent with our contact about what's been going on, how I've been feeling, just to keep them in the loop, because what my plan was to give myself this week to see how things were feeling. And then I would go from there with making a decision on if I felt good about being able to do it and staying injury free. So what I didn't expect in that conversation, which first I will preface and say, he was so supportive and he was like, you have to do what's best for you. Your health is number one. I care about you in that way. I just want to make sure that you're healthy and you're happy and running, and it's kind of nobody's fault type situation. So that made me feel better just because he didn't have to feel that way. And I feel sometimes it's hard where these partnerships, it's they either only look at you as things are only approached from a business perspective. And I just felt I was being taken care of as a human, which was really nice. But the downfall is that today, as in this morning, they were essentially they had to make a decision because they were getting billed for all the rooms. And so if I were to say, yeah, I'm going to do it, and then this week didn't go well, they were gifting us a room and then they had to cover it, and then I wouldn't be there. Knowing that, I would have felt really bad if that would have been the case. And so I talked to you obviously about things, and because there was still the decision where you could totally go if you had wanted to, and I'll let you speak to your thoughts on things, but I just made the decision to not go. And he even talked to the rest of the Destination Marathons team, and everybody was so kind, so supportive, and I'm very grateful for that. But a huge bummer. But at the same time, what I will say is I have this massive weight that is lifted off of my shoulders, because something that was coming up for me was if I didn't have this finite, this timeline, then I would be fine. I would have even just had to do a 45-minute run over the weekend instead of 60 minutes. Now I really get to build at a slower rate because things are progressing. And even today I did a 4-mile run, which is around 35, 36 minutes. And I felt really good afterwards. And it was that same feeling I was feeling after 30-minute runs. And so I think that this is just going to give me time to go at my own rate with healing and recovering. And I still would love to be able to do a fall half marathon, but I'm not going to sign up for anything until I'm in a good spot, because I just don't want to put that pressure on myself again. And I've just been so relaxed and so chill within the last 24 hours, basically, since having that conversation and also making that decision. But yeah, so complete change of events.
That's okay. That's such is life. And it is what it is. And I think it's important to just be your own advocate for yourself. And this was different kind of situation because we had a partnership for this race. So it wasn't like I can just eat the cost of the registration and just do whatever I want. But we had an agreement with a company to go to do this. So it changed the whole thought process behind it, and like the pressure that you were feeling was a little different. And so I think though it's still admirable to like so many people, so many runners would have gone anyways, and they would have run injured or hurt themselves even more. And so I think that it's really admirable of you to just do what's best for you, regardless of if it's a brand deal or not. Speak up for yourself and make that decision. Follow your gut and not worry about all the other things that kind of like led into that weekend, because so many people, so many runners, and so many would have just been like, well, I'm going to go.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And I'm going to hurt myself.
It's so funny too, because it's almost like when this all first started and I got that onset of initial stress because of that, in my head, I was like, well, this is a non-negotiable. I'm going. Like, I have to go. And so that's where I didn't allow myself yet to have that thought process of, well, you don't have to go. Like, if it's not in your best interest, like for your health, you don't have to go. And then once I started to have that thought process of like, oh, okay, well, yeah, I can be an advocate for myself and I can make a different decision. I could just tell it was the right one. And
it was the right
I think like, who knows, like I could have been at a place where I could have like done it, for fun, but I just don't want to risk it. I don't want to rush it. And now I get to take my time, which is good. So yeah, we're going to like just play it by ear, not going to make any decisions about the fall for a while until I'm like in a really good spot. And even then, like I still, of course, like I would love to be able to do like wine glass, for example. I think that would be a fun half. But if for some reason, like I need some more time, like there's so many local races that I can do that would still be super fun. So yeah, we're just going to go with it. But
yeah.
Tell us about you.
Okay. So because you're not going to grandma's, I'm not going to grandma's either. I'm not going to go by myself. So I could have still gone with destination marathons and done the whole weekend, which I'm sure would have been fun. I'm sure I would have met some awesome people and still had fun, but I would have been completely by myself. And I have traveled the world by myself. I'm fine with doing that. But there was a different layer of this too, where I would have had to fly into Minneapolis, because if you fly into Duluth, which is where the race is, it's wicked expensive to fly there as opposed to Minneapolis. But then it's a 2-hour drive to get to Duluth. I was going to have to take a late flight that night, or like a late afternoon flight, which would have put me in Minneapolis like later, because my Caleb's kindergarten graduation ceremony was that morning. They moved up the last day of school by a week because we didn't use snow days. So they moved. So at first when we were looking at grandma's, I was like, oh, no problem. Like the last day of school is the next week. Well, they moved it up a week. So I would have missed the very last day of school that Friday, and then rushed out of the kindergarten ceremony to go to the airport, which was fine. I was going to do it. It was fine. So when you told me you didn't want to go, there was this like relief even for me from like a family mom perspective, of just like, okay, now I don't have to worry about that. Now I don't have to ask my mom to take them out for ice cream. I can go take them out and do something. Like last year, the last day of school, I bought them like a bounce house and we had like so much fun, and it's like, which is fine. I would have figured it out, but it was like this just kind of relief of like, okay, well now I don't have to worry about it and it's fine. I didn't want to go and drive 2 hours in the dark in the middle of Minnesota by myself. So it is what it is. So it's fine. And like I was voice messaging you yesterday. You may have voice messaged me back, but at this point, okay. I have to listen to those.
It's okay.
Well, Monday through Thursday is like,
I know,
nonstop. When you messaged me, that was at school pickup, and then we went straight to baseball, bed, wake up. I ran this morning, and then I had to we walked to school as part of a PTA thing this morning, where we all met at 8 a.m. So I had to, and I finished my run around like 6:45. I had to wake everybody up early, get them dressed, fed, ready, out the door, and we had to be down there. We were down there. It was like a 15-minute walk to school, so it wasn't like far.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I have not stopped since I messaged you those messages yesterday. Well, anyways, okay. I was saying like we should do something fun
Yeah.
to make up for not going to grandma's, like just you and me, whether it's like we find something in the middle of where we live or you come here, I go there, and we can still have fun and do a fun race. So anyways, I guess my running, I will say, guys, I'm going to report here because you guys are keeping me accountable. Tony's keeping me accountable here to my recovery. And I was telling you guys how I just hadn't been feeling good because I hadn't been getting sleep. And I think I wasn't eating enough to support all of the training and the lifting that I'm doing. I have made some changes, and guys, I am feeling so much better.
Good.
Yeah, I've been getting, about on average an hour more of sleep every night, if not more than what I had been getting. And I was telling my strength coach also that I was doing 3 leg days a week, guys. So we're backing off of that a little bit. And I was telling her about the sleep, and she's like, that's an entire extra night of sleep a week. Because I'm getting 1 hour more.
Oh my God. When you think about that, oh, girl.
Yeah. When she said that, I was like, wow, like that's powerful. So I am feeling much better with my sleep. Yeah. I've upped my calorie intake. And just like, I'm like, I just need more. And so because I'm doing that, I mean, I'm falling asleep right away. I am staying asleep. I'm getting restorative sleep. And like, those are some of the ways that I know I'm like getting back to like what I know my body typically does with when it comes to recovery and my sleep and all that stuff. I made some changes, no more binging. I was like going through the TV the other night and I was like, ooh, maybe I'll start. I was like, no, Christy, don't you dare start a new series. Like, do not start a new TV series because I know what happens when I start a TV series. But anyways, so now that I'm not doing grandma's, I'll probably still continue with like the mileage that I'm doing. Because I am feeling good.
That, right?
Yeah, we pulled it down a little bit. Like I was closer to like 40 miles a week. Like this week I'm at 33. So I did pull that down. I still have like an 11-mile workout this weekend, 9-mile workout tomorrow. So I'm still I'm still doing like good work. I've changed up my splits for my lifting, so that'll help. And then I'm going to do, I'll probably sign up for it now that we're not doing grandma's because I was like, I don't know how I'll feel after grandma's because the 5K that I want to do is a week and a half. It's on July 4th. So it was a week and a half after grandma's. Yeah. And a mom at school who she's running now and I love it. She told me about it and it's a flat and fast. I always say fat. So flat and fast course. And so it's the 4th of July. So I might sign up for that. And then like 2 weeks after that, I have Boilermaker.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
That'll be fun.
Boilermaker, like I'm not doing anything crazy there. Like last year I ran it for the first time. Everyone was like, it's so hot and it's so hilly. Yeah, there were hills, but I did not think they were like as bad as everybody kind of made it out to seem. But anyways, it's still a hot day and usually humid and there are some hills. So I'm not trying to like go and break any records, but I do kind of want a course PR at least.
For sure.
Which I think I averaged last year like an 8:30 pace. Like I was just chilling. I was just like throwing water on myself, running through hoses. Like I was totally just like there for the experience. So I also reached out to Vicky. You know, she is the one, Vicky is the one who kind of like asked me to come last year and I'm going again through her this year. She works for Boilermaker. I told her, I was like, do you think this year you can maybe give me some information about spectating? Because last year my husband missed the race entirely.
Right. My God, I forgot about that.
He did not realize how big it was. Like he had all 3 kids and it was like all the road closures. He completely missed the race. Yeah. And so she's going to give us some spectating tips and tricks.
God, that's
and like
so funny.
So maybe they can like actually see me running the race this year. Oh my God, I know. So anyways,
I feel like we need to have like a training, like a special live training for
husbands.
The husbands.
Oh my God.
I should say spouses because even for the people who aren't, it's the other way around for spectating.
That's hilarious. That's such a good idea. We can do like a webinar.
A live webinar. We'll do it going into every huge race.
Yeah, it could be non-runner spouses or partners. This is for you.
Will's making noises. I think he's making fun of us.
Or he secretly wants us to do it because he struggles. So
we'll say that.
We see you, Will.
I see you. Also, a moment of silence for him. He started his master's program last week and he has 24 papers to do in 8 weeks. So moment of silence.
Thank you. I'm not in school anymore, so have fun with that. Okay, I think we should get into it because we have a lot to talk about today.
All right. So You may or may not know this. Christine, I'm going to brag about you. But
Okay.
Christine has created a series of running programs called Bump Runner that includes a pregnancy running program and 2 postpartum programs. So she has been a certified running coach for over 8 years and is also a certified pre and postnatal fitness specialist and is also certified in women's health and fitness. So, all of the Bump Runner programs have been verified by a doctor of physical therapy, pelvic floor specialist to ensure that they're all following pelvic floor practices and are up to date. And today we're going to specifically talk about pregnancy running. So, we have gone through the postpartum programs in much more detail in episode 19. So if you are curious about the postpartum programs we offer, you can go ahead and listen to episode 19 and let us know if you have any follow-up questions. Christine, why don't you go ahead and tell everyone a little bit more about what we're talking about today with the pregnancy running bump runner program?
Awesome. Thank you for that.
Welcome.
Yes, we have a 3 different programs in the Bump Runner program. The main one is the pregnancy running program, as I call it. That's what we're going to be talking about today. And then the 2 postpartum programs, like Toni said, you can listen more information about that in episode 19 or just check out our website and all the details are there. But today, the pregnancy running program is going to start as early as week 5 gestationally of your pregnancy, but you can start it really at any point throughout your pregnancy. And then I set up your calendar to enter the program at whatever week you are at. But it's basically the entire point of this program is to help you continue running throughout your pregnancy for as long as your body allows you to. The program is set up from week 5 to week 40 plus, but obviously, you go as long as you want or you start whenever you want. It's set up with 4 days of running per week. And then I believe later on in the 3rd trimester, the last month or so, it drops down. You can drop whatever you want. It's not a customized plan. That's one-on-one coaching. So it is a standard plan. And as a result of that, I have all of the run days as standard running recommendations based on duration. So it would be like, example, run 30 to 40 minutes, just because that could look very different with mileage from one person to the next.
Mm-hmm.
And as you go on in your pregnancy, the time it takes you to run 4 miles is going to change that
Yeah.
from, what it would take you at 20 weeks versus 35 weeks. So
Yeah.
there are 3 strength days on your calendar during this program. All of the strength days are highly focused, and you'll get an idea of this if you know one thing from all my programs. It's highly focused on pelvic floor and core health. And they are, I would say, on the more conservative side. I'm not going to be telling you to throw a barbell over your head or anything crazy. The workouts themselves are more on the conservative side just because this is a standard plan for everybody. So a lot of banded work and dumbbell work. And it is going to basically, the idea of these strength days is to give you that pelvic floor love that it needs, which is then going to help you, hopefully, continue running for as long into your pregnancy as your body, again, allows. And I teach you how to find the muscles and I teach you how to properly activate your pelvic floor, because sometimes people just think it's a Kegel or it's just, hey, do bird dog and you're therefore working on your pelvic floor. And it's not that. And so I work with you on a lot of verbal cues and visual cues as well to kind of help you find those muscles and work them the right way. And then I also have Dr. Carolyn Latham, who is a pelvic floor physical therapist. She has come in. She's the one who certified all the programs, making sure everything is in accordance with pelvic floor health and practices. And there are some educational videos in there from her that teach you different things like diaphragmatic breathing, bearing down, prolapse, all the different things that you need to know as you're going through pregnancy and staying active with running. So yeah, that's kind of like it in a nutshell. It's a great program. It has helped so many women run through their pregnancy or at least get further than they were able to in the past. Again, everyone is so different. As far as you get into your pregnancy with running does not determine how badass of a runner you are. I've heard some people say that. I'm like, no.
Yeah.
It does not matter how far along you get. But a lot of times it's just a personal choice that people want. And this is a program that can kind of give you a fighting chance.
Which is amazing. And how we're going to go through today, guys, is similar to what we did for episode 19. There's some questions that Christine often gets on this topic, and so we just wanted to take some time to address those. So it's going to be kind of like Q&A style, but like we said before, if you do have additional questions for us, you can either DM Christine. Myself, I will not be able to answer. I will refer them to Christine or a Relentless Runners account. But let's kick off with the first one, which is, what are some typical preconceived ideas that women have about pregnancy and exercise or running? I know that there's a lot out there. So how about you share with us what they are?
Sure. So obviously, I'm not going to be able to share every single one, but there are a couple that, come to top of mind with what like a myth is that somebody thinks is the standard practice for pregnancy in general. So, one myth that still circulates to this day, and I still get questions about, is when you're pregnant and exercising, that you need to keep your heart rate below 140. So,
Mm.
this was a piece of advice back in the day. And this advice was actually dropped by the ACOG, which is the American College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists. This advice was dropped in 1994, and it is still being told by doctors and the military. Even my cousin was told this in the military, that she needed to keep her heart rate below 150. Like, that is still advice being pushed. But anyways, that was dropped in 1994. So a good rule of thumb when you are exercising is not to focus on a certain heart rate number, but rather just to do the talk test, right? Like, keeping things easy. Just if you were out, we're talking to runners here, right? So as we talk about zone 2 and that easy running that we always talk about, the idea behind that is that it's a conversational pace and that you can carry on a conversation with somebody as you are running. That's the same idea here. This is going to vary person to person, because there are some people out there who, before getting pregnant, they were very like high into their fitness. They were doing a lot of sprints and a lot of speed work. That is something that you can like continue with, and that is going to mean you're probably going to be out of that conversational rate, but that might change as your pregnancy progresses. But again, it's not a hard line of a number that you have to keep your heart rate under. So that's one
Yeah.
myth.
I was thinking, kind of related to that. I think of our coach Carly, like when she found out she was pregnant, like she had ran the London Marathon. She was in the middle of marathon training, and then she thought she had an off day in London. And then when she got back, she found out she was pregnant.
Mm.
And it was like, well, there it is. That's
Yep.
why. But afterwards, like when she recovered from the marathon and all that stuff and was getting back into things, because she had that fitness base, like she was able to do track workouts, and everything
Mhm.
was focused on effort and everything. But that was just an example. And of course, like you said before, as things kind of like went on through her pregnancy, she of course scaled things down and modified things and all of that. But, and I know that there's a lot of other women out there, but again, just
Yep.
the like you are still, it sounds like you're still able to do more if you're going into the pregnancy with like a certain base when it comes to whether it's volume or intensity and stuff. So that's really interesting.
Yeah. And that actually kind of leads me into my next point, or my next myth, is that if you were sedentary before getting pregnant, you cannot work out once you are pregnant. And so that's
Mm.
obviously not true. It's highly encouraged that you start working out if you were not working out before you got pregnant. There is a caveat to that, and that there are some sports that you should not pick up once you become pregnant. One of those is running. Running is a very high intensity, high impact sport, and it's very like vigorous on your body, and it puts a huge strain on your body. So that is one that if you've never been a runner and all of a sudden you get pregnant and you're like, I want to become a runner, it's probably not the best time, and your body's probably not going to agree with it very well. Think about if you are not pregnant and you pick up running. Like, it's a lot on your body. It takes your body time to recover. It's hard on your body, and you kind of go through this curve of learning with your body adjusting. When you're getting pregnant, it's not the time to just kind of pick that up. But that's not to say you can't work out and you can't still do cardio and you can't lift weights. There's so many things you can do between swimming and biking and lifting weights. It's actually highly encouraged because of all the benefits. That's another myth. And then I would say the third myth would be that you can't do any exercises on your back when you're pregnant. There is what people will say is that there is basically a vein that when you lay down on your back, blood supply will get cut off. And so that's why they say you can't lay down on your back. Now that is, something that you want to avoid at some point, but that doesn't mean you can't lay down on your back at all. And I will get this question because some of the exercises in the program will have you laying on your back. And it's like, okay, well, you're only laying there for maybe a minute. And it's okay as long as you're comfortable. So some of the things to, look out for are if you're getting lightheaded or nauseous, or obviously feeling any contractions, or it simply just hurts and doesn't feel good, that
Mhm.
you would want to get off of your back. But that is not to say that you can't be on your back at all while you are pregnant. But that is another myth when it comes to exercising that I've heard moms ask me about before.
Those are good ones. I actually do vaguely, I don't remember where I saw that, but I remember hearing something along the lines of like being on your back. And I don't want to I don't want to jump the gun with like questions, but
Yeah.
is it okay if I ask something
Yeah,
too?
yeah, of course.
There's like, and let me know if you cover this because then we'll just like save it for later. But like throughout like certain moments or certain like points of your pregnancy, you're allowed and like not allowed to do certain things, right? Like there's like once you get to a certain point, are you like not allowed to do, I don't know, a certain type of like exercise or like be in a certain position? Does that make
Yeah,
sense?
no, it
Because I feel
totally
like I've
makes
heard that,
sense.
but I don't know if that's real.
Yeah, it makes sense. But what I will say is that I don't really, when I look at pregnancy and what I know about pregnancy and exercise during pregnancy, there isn't something that I would say, you are not allowed to do that while you're pregnant. You
Got
cannot do
it.
that. It's
Yeah.
more about, hey, well, there's all these like caveats to it. So like laying
Sure.
on your back, for example, or say you're
Hmm.
doing a movement and you start to see coning in your abdomen, which could
Oh,
indicate
yeah.
ab separation, which is that diastasis recti. And you don't
Hmm.
want to do that. And people will say pregnancy safe exercises. And I don't like to think of it that way. I like to think of it as like, okay, well, there's something going on. We can fix it with some different breath and contraction work. And then let's try that exercise again and see if we can correct it. Everyone's very different. And a lot of it comes down to comfort and like, are you comfortable doing that exercise or are you not? But I don't necessarily sit here and say you cannot do that while you are pregnant.
Yeah. Great. Kind of related to what you were talking about in one of the last myths is what are some benefits to exercising while pregnant and what personal benefits do you see in your own pregnancies that you've had?
There are so many physical benefits. So many physical benefits to mom and baby, your cardiovascular system, during your labor, your recovery, like so many. And I'm going to list out a bunch. So this answer is going to be like long-winded, so bear with me. But before I do that, I do think that there's a lot of mental benefits to exercising while you're pregnant. And this is like where my personal benefits came in, is so this is coming from like a personal viewpoint, but I think it starts by giving us a sense of control over our changing bodies. During pregnancy, obviously, there's so much that changes physically and emotionally, and it can feel very out of control with your body growing, and it's growing. And sometimes that can be really hard for people. By exercising and having something to follow and something to look forward to and challenging your body in a way, it gives you this sense of control that you are controlling your body in this moment versus just having that feeling like you're completely out of control throughout pregnancy. So I think that there's like a huge mental side, not just from like the typical mental benefits that exercise gives you, right? But just that control factor, because you really do sometimes feel like your body's just doing its own thing and you have no
Sure.
idea what it's doing. So
Yeah, yeah.
so yeah, there's that. Some of the other personal benefits that I found through my 3 pregnancies, especially like during my third one, was that I was able to keep up with my 2 little boys. I had 2 little boys when I was pregnant with Charlie, so by being really active, I was able to keep up with them, chase them down, do all the things, and it really didn't stop me in that sense. Again, the mental clarity control. I think the fast and effective labors that I had with the easier recovery was huge, and that's what I'm going to talk about in just a second. And I also feel that as though my running fitness came back faster in my second and third pregnancies, like postpartum, because I was so active in my second and third pregnancy as compared to my first. I know we talked about this a little bit in episode 19 about postpartum running, but like that was a huge motivator for me of just like thinking long term and thinking like what was coming down the
Sure.
road to just kind of continue
Yeah.
being active, especially in like the back half of the pregnancy when you do start to get tired and your body does start to get bigger, that it is kind of harder to get yourself going. So that was like a big motivating factor to me. But all right, I'm going to list out some things because these are really important and I like to know the why behind things. So if I know why I'm doing something, it kind of helps me doing them in those moments when I may not want to do them. So I'm going to list out first some benefits to mom and baby. from exercising during pregnancy. So when you exercise during pregnancy, and I'll tell you how much exercise is needed to reap all of these benefits in a minute, but it lowers your risk of things like preeclampsia, hypertension, gestational diabetes. And studies have actually shown that exercise before getting pregnant can reduce your chances of getting gestational diabetes by 55%. Like that's a really big chance of reducing gestational diabetes. Obviously can lower risk of things like excessive weight gain, nausea, headaches, back pain, incontinence, which is like leaking. So there's like those physical benefits to it, just because that's not just risk to mom, but also to baby as well, all of those things. I know I touched on the cardiovascular system benefits a little bit in episode 19, but I am going to talk about them again for anyone who did not listen to that. But your blood volume can increase up to 50% in an active pregnant woman. So that means your body is working harder to pump the blood through your body, right? So that's why we tend to feel, I keep saying I'm not pregnant anymore, guys. I got to stop saying that. But that's why pregnant women, as you're walking upstairs or talking on the phone, sometimes it can make you feel really out of breath just doing something simple, because your body is obviously not only growing a baby, but you also have more blood volume that your heart is working to pump through. One of the other cool things is that the combination of the physical activity and pregnancy, so again, that increase in blood volume, can improve a pregnant woman's maximal aerobic capacity, so like that VO2 max, by 5 to 10%. So you're increasing your VO2 max and getting that oxygen through your body to your muscles, which is really, really cool if you think about it. I know. Yeah. I just think it's like the coolest thing ever. I know I talked about the study from CLAP in 2002 that said that because of all of this, because of the increase in blood volume and the physical activity that you are performing while you're pregnant, that has the training effect of pregnancy can basically, it's kind of compared to as blood doping, because 6 to 12 months after birth, you can start to see as an athlete some of this, like the benefits become more apparent. And that's why a lot of women who are really active during pregnancy can tend to have huge PRs that are set in their first year after having a baby because of that blood volume. And they say, according to the study, that it was actually compared to the same effect as blood doping, which is kind of cool.
Crazy. Yeah, that's so crazy. And I remember sharing too on the last episode that even one of my athletes had that experience too, because we started working together after her first pregnancy. And once it must have been within like the first year or whatever, but she was training for a half marathon, and that's where she set like a half PR, and she was like, yeah, it was really interesting, but super cool to hear like the actual science behind it. So
yeah, it is really cool just to know that everything that you're doing during pregnancy is not just good for you and baby physically and mentally, but also like your labor, and then like so much further down the road, that it's just really motivating to like do all of the things that can keep you super healthy, even when you don't want to do it. So that's like that. Yeah. So anyways, there are labor benefits to prenatal exercise, and I truly witnessed this firsthand. So regular prenatal exercise is associated with decreased maternal glucose levels. It increases active labor progression, which is twice as likely to progress from 4 centimeters to 10 centimeters in less than 4 hours. Hello, that happened to me twice. So you can basically progress throughout your labor quicker to get to the point where you are in active labor. It decreases second stage labor from 60 to 36 minutes. And then it decreases the postpartum recovery time. And I know that this is what we were kind of just talking about, and we were talking about this a lot more depth in the part 1 of this series, was the recovery time, that, and just like how you feel after you go through labor and delivery, and that it just decreases that time and you feel a lot better, a lot quicker. So I will take that. And then it also, when we're looking at labor and just delivery, it also is associated with decreased intrapartum interventions, such as Pitocin, which is something like a drug that they give you to help further along your labor and kind of get your contractions in your body going. So anyways, all that to say, there are a lot of benefits to everything. And when we look at how much exercise we actually need to reap these benefits, it is recommended that it's 150 minutes of physical activity per week, which is 3 days a week of 50-minute workouts, or 5 days a week of 30-minute workouts, where you are in like moderate activity, where you're getting your heart rate up, and you're actually, kind of working and pushing yourself and getting to that like talk test, that conversational pace, or something that your body is used to. Really, it's not like this crazy. That's really not that crazy. Like that's not a crazy amount of exercise.
Yeah.
So it should hopefully, if you are pregnant or you're hoping to become pregnant and want to go through pregnancy with being active or running or just active in general, that's what you need to do to start reaping a lot of these benefits.
Yeah, I even noticed my old neighbor, she was very active during her I didn't know her during her first pregnancy because when they moved in, her daughter was already a few years old, but with her second, we lived next door and she was like a huge Peloton girly. She did tons of rides like throughout the week, but that was like her big thing. And for her, like, because she doesn't do any running, but even when she was getting back into the swing of things, like the pregnancy or the labor went amazing. And then even getting back into her like previous like fitness was like, I don't want to say it was easy because I know that it's never easy, but it sounded like it was better compared to the first pregnancy.
Yeah.
Anything else on that before we move on?
I don't think
You
so.
wanna
I
share?
think that, I mean, there's obviously more benefits. Those are just kind of some
Like the
other ones
base.
to note.
Yeah.
Yeah. But
Yeah.
it's that's why I've said in the past, like, it's pretty undeniable the amount of benefits that have been shown to the body and the baby and the whole experience that would be like, unless you have a reason not to by your doctor to exercise, which there are reasons why some
Sure.
moms can't, that
Yeah.
it's so beneficial to move your body with intention every day.
Absolutely. Going on to our next question, what are some things a pregnant running mama can focus on during their journey?
All right. So there are a lot, but I'm going to give you three. I'm just going to give you three.
I feel like that's every single question.
Well,
There's a lot.
pregnancy is so complex, right? Like,
Yeah,
there's
it's very
so
nuanced.
much. There's so much. So I'm going to give you three. So the first thing that I want you to focus on if you are pregnant and or want to become pregnant and run through your pregnancy, even if you're not a runner, this is important, okay? First and foremost, your pelvic floor and deep core. I say it all the time. I will continue to promote pelvic floor health and strength. Is I find it to be one of the most important and critical things that a pregnant runner should be focusing on. When you're running, it increases your intra-abdominal pressure by 2.5%. With every step, your pelvic floor muscles contract to absorb the force. And your pelvic floor acts as a hammock to not only support baby, but all the muscles like the organs, the uterus, bladder, rectum. I have a structure back there if I need to show anybody, but it's like a hammock. And so if you take anything from this, I want it to be for you to learn how to properly find, connect, engage, and relax your pelvic floor and your transverse abdominal muscles, because it's all works together. This is something that, like I said, I teach in my bump runner courses because it is critical to just the longevity of just your running and that return, that recovery, all of the things that we've talked about. So you can go to a pelvic floor PT where they can help you. They can show you like, oh, you're not actually engaging your pelvic floor. When I first started my journey with all of this a long time ago, I did not realize that I was not actually engaging my pelvic floor the way that I thought it meant. First of all, I don't think I even knew what that really meant back in the day.
Yeah.
And it's more than just a Kegel. And even my OB, which I'm not with her anymore for other reasons, including this, but it was just like, oh, just do Kegels. And it's like, no, it is so much more to that than just doing a Kegel, which for even those of you who don't even know what that means, it's if you were peeing and you would stop the flow of urine mid like pee. It's those muscles.
Yeah.
That's basic.
that.
So yeah, you're just stopping the flow. It's like she's over here doing Kegels. That's okay.
Everybody listening did it too. Well, women,
That's okay.
I guess. Women
okay.
listening did it. You all did it. I'm not the only one.
No, that's okay. But that's like essentially what a Kegel is. And so there's more to it than that to create that to basically connect the hammock that I was referring to. And the Kegel is basically just the front part. We want to connect all of it together. So that's where a lot of women fall short, is that they just don't realize that they're not actually engaging the right muscles.
Sure.
So that would be the first piece of advice I would give you is find out how to actually find those muscles. All right. Number 2 is to warm up your pelvic floor before you run. So your pelvic floor is a muscle, and just like you would warm up your posterior chain before performing heavy deadlifts, or you just dynamic warm-ups just to go run generally, it's important and it can be really beneficial for you to just warm up the muscles with your pelvic floor. It's basically, I don't want to say turning them on because I know that's not what we're doing, but we are just kind of being like, hey guys, it's time to work. So as runners, like I said, we need to be warming up. And I know Coach Lauren had talked to us about this. She's a physical therapist for our team, or a coach for our team. And on one of the calls, she had talked about that when you go out for a run, say you don't warm up at all and you don't do any exercises with dynamic or activations, going out on a run, it can take the runner 20 to 30 minutes of continuous running before they're really warmed up and all the muscles are firing on all cylinders. So for some people, their run is almost done at that point, if it's like a shorter run. So by getting everything, again, firing on all cylinders, we can get that ahead of time. So that way the muscles are working the optimal way when we're actually out taking all of that pressure. So as a pregnant runner, warming up your pelvic floor, like honestly, I still do this. I think it's just because it's so ingrained in my head and my body just with teaching these courses and doing all this stuff all the time. But I don't really do anything different than my typical dynamic warm-ups that I do even to this day. I just add in pelvic floor work throughout the lateral banded work, or even just like a normal squat. I add in the pelvic floor work during those. And so it's just
like simplify it. Yeah.
It does not need to be crazy. You don't need to be on the floor doing all these crazy movements. It can just be in your normal stuff that you're doing. As long as you know how to actually find those muscles, then you can just add it into basically everything that you're doing.
Awesome.
So the third one, I would say as a piece of advice or something that you can be focusing on in your pregnancy running journey is to not dismiss the following. So don't dismiss utilizing run walk intervals. It is underrated and it is sometimes frowned upon, or just like if you're a runner who never walks or you're a runner who just runs straight, whatever, switching to a run walk can be hard, I think, sometimes because of whatever your reasoning is. And I want to encourage you to utilize run walk intervals if things start to get to the point where you are either cardiovascularly struggling and you're out of breath and you're just like really gassed and you're just struggling that way, or if you notice your body is starting to get tensed up. Another thing that we can talk about is if you do start leaking urine and reaching that threshold while you are out on your run pregnant, that the run walk can kind of help prolong that from happening because you're giving your muscles a chance.
Interesting.
Yeah. So the run walk can be super beneficial. That's how I bring all of my moms back in the postpartum running program, is a progression of run walk.
Sure.
And it's so powerful. And I think it gets like poo-pooed on and whatnot sometimes, but don't dismiss it because it really can be helpful. I don't care how experienced of a runner you are. And then the next one is switch to duration based. So don't dismiss utilizing run walk and don't dismiss switching to duration based runs. Instead of just being like, I'm going to go run for 5 miles, because the further on in your pregnancy, you will slow down. It is going to happen. So effort is greater than pace. Go off of effort and just go off of duration, and just whatever you get done that day, you get done, and it's okay. It is going to tape that like mental pressure off of like, I have to get 5 miles. Well, no, I just ran for 60 minutes and I'm calling it a day. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It really kind of helps the mental side of things and the physical side, but
totally.
I think the mental side more than anything, with, you're still hitting a rounded number if you must. And
it's just time, not distance.
Yeah. Yeah. So those would be, I would say, 3 things that you can start to focus on in your journey.
No, I love those. Now, I know that you were kind of talking about leaking and all of that, and that kind of is related to the next question. So what are things that a pregnant mom should look out for when they are running while pregnant?
Yeah. So this would probably be like one of the big questions that I get, is like about leaking, or like, when do I have to stop? Or does this mean I have to stop? So I like to split some of these issues into 2 categories, one yellow flags and one red flags. A yellow flag is going to be something that doesn't necessarily mean that you have to stop running, but it means you need to pay attention and maybe take some steps to keep it from getting to red status. Red is if you're experiencing these things, then there's a pretty good chance that you need to stop running at this point. So I'll give you a couple examples of some yellow flags and some red flags. So yellow flags first. Number 1, the symptom is feeling of a dull pain in the pelvis. This happened to me actually a lot when I was pregnant with, this is what made me stop running with my first pregnancy. I was getting a lot of pelvic pain, like sharp pain. and it was pretty much dull for pregnancies 2 and 3, but that is because I did a lot of pelvic floor work and it basically kept it at bay. So if you are getting some dull pain in the pelvis, it doesn't mean that you're done with running. You might be done with running that day. Like something may just be off that day. And so maybe just cut your run short and just be done. If you're not already, begin that pelvic floor exercises, the hip strengthening exercises to really work on the supporting muscles and just, again, working on properly finding and connecting those muscles. Or if at this point, this could be a good point that you go see a pelvic floor PT so they can help you figure out what the problem is and they can help you with like what you specifically need. The second yellow flag is feeling pressure in the pelvis and the vagina. So there's a difference between like the dull ache and then that pressure feeling. The pressure is super like common because you have a baby that is growing and it's pressing down on everything and everything's getting contorted in there. I don't know if you've ever seen like the videos of like how your organs and everything like move to make space for the baby. It's so crazy. But you can start to get pressure. Now, this is definitely a yellow flag because this can turn to red status quickly. And when it does, you need to be careful because the pressure can turn to something called prolapse, which is essentially, and I know this sounds really scary, but it's when your organs are basically starting to fall out of your body. No joke, it does. And when that status, that's a red flag. So I already jumped the gun on that one, but that is like, you're done. There is no more running for you at that point. But pressure does not necessarily mean that you're done. Again, it's common, especially later on in pregnancy as baby gets bigger. So again, we want to continue to strengthen the pelvic floor. We want those muscles to be able to support what is going on and the growth that's happening. This is one of those instances where considering to do a run walk intervals can help alleviate that constant load, that intra-abdominal pressure that's happening. So when you walk, you're kind of giving everything a break. You're giving like just when you give your heart a break when you're walking, and now you're giving those muscles a break before you start up that pressure again. But again, I just want to make sure I say that if this one gets really heavy, the pressure gets really heavy, it can quickly turn to an onset of prolapse, which again, we want to be very mindful of. So watch that one. Again, doesn't necessarily mean that you're done running though. The third one, which I would say is probably the most common question, is that you're leaking urine while running. And this happens not even just with pregnant moms. People who've never had a baby, it happens a lot postpartum. So leaking urine while running during your pregnancy, it's a yellow flag. It's not a red flag. It does not mean that you have to stop. It just means that there's weakness in your pelvic floor. So again, working on that pelvic floor strength, doing those exercises, truly connecting the way that you need to be connecting is key here. But it might mean that you have found your threshold for that muscle. So for example, if you start to leak a little pee around mile 3 or 30 minutes into every single run, like you're fine up until that point, and then at 30 minutes, you start to notice you're leaking, what that means is that the muscle's gotten fatigued and it was holding on and it was supporting everything until around 30 minutes. It was just, okay, it was too much at that point. And then it started weakening and that's where the urine was leaking out. So again, it doesn't mean that you have to be done with running. It may just mean that you can't go past 30 minutes, or maybe you can continue working with some pelvic floor exercises to continue to strengthen. Again, it's a muscle, guys. Your pelvic floor is a muscle. You can strengthen it just like any other muscle. So you might be able to raise that threshold a little bit. But what I don't want you to do is to run 60 to 90 minutes after you know your threshold's 30 minutes and you're just kind of pounding down on that muscle when it's already weak and fatigued, and then you're just kind of almost damaging it a little bit more than it needs to be. So, getting to your max, stopping your run, continuing to work on those pelvic floor muscles, and then maybe you can start extending that threshold a little bit more.
Super helpful.
Yeah, I think it's really important to know because I think that a lot of moms that I've worked with and talked to, they get scared when they feel something and they're like, oh my gosh, what is this? Like, I don't want to do damage.
Makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think it's good to know what is like a hard stop and what's okay, this is okay. These are some things I can work on to help alleviate what I'm experiencing, but it doesn't necessarily mean I have to hang up my laces. So red flags, these are the ones that are something that you do need to take seriously. And it most likely means that you should be done running for the remainder of your pregnancy. Again, this is where a pelvic floor PT and communication with your OB and your midwife is really key here, because everyone is so different. And what I say here may not necessarily apply to you, but these are pretty like red flags, hard stop type of guidance here. But anyways, the first one is kind of what I was alluding to before with the prolapse. Prolapse, again, is when you feel like an extreme heavy pressure. And some have described it as feeling like a tampon is falling out, if you know that feeling. Yeah. Okay, TMI, or if like you didn't put it in all the way and you can like feel it. Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
That's the feeling. That's like the worst feeling ever. But that's what it's been described as. So that's like extreme heaviness there. That can be a sign of prolapse, which we do not want. A lot of times that can be a very long road to recovery, and it is a very large issue. If you are feeling that, please go find a pelvic floor physical therapist, and it should be addressed right away by a PT. So don't ignore it and don't continue to run through that. Another red flag is having signs of SPD, which is symphysis pubis dysfunction. Some refer to it as pelvic girdle pain, but SPD can become worse if you continue to aggravate it, and it can be a kind of a slippery and painful slope. So sometimes it'll feel like almost like lightning crotch, like these kind of like sharp pains in your like inner thigh or your bikini line or like in your pelvis area. And the more that you start to like split your legs, so split squats or running can aggravate it. So some deep squats or some wide leg lunges, anything that's really kind of extending them out or side can aggravate it and make it feel worse. And like I said, it can kind of like continue to get worse. Some will experience, this is what happened to me in my first pregnancy, getting in and out of the car because you're splitting your leg open.
Oh yeah.
You can feel that, or climbing the stairs, getting in and out of bed, anything where you're like spreading wide. Just like, splitting your legs. It can give you like it can be really painful and it can be really uncomfortable. So that would be potentially a red flag as well. And the last red flag, this I feel like is borderline between yellow and red. This is one that I actually had in my third pregnancy, and I was able to fix it and continue running, which is SI pain, SI joint pain or sciatic nerve pain. They can be especially hard in the third trimester. So SI joint pain can be felt in like the lower back and can sometimes radiate up your low back or down your thighs. And it can be worsened with that single leg movement, which obviously is involved in running. And it can be really painful. The sciatic nerve pain happens when the spine is compressed in some way, which again, like growing baby, can press on things, and it can cause inflammation of the nerve. And it can feel like a burning sensation in the low back, the butt, like tingling or numbing down one leg. Chiropractors and PTs can be a godsend in these situations, and they can be super helpful. You might be out of alignment in certain ways. Like I had a chiropractor that I went to, especially during my third pregnancy. I was having some issues. I was having some SI pain, and I realized that my pregnancy pillow, which I hate pregnancy pillows, they don't work. They're stupid. Get rid of them, in my opinion. They might work for you. They didn't work for me. Because what was happening was I had this pregnancy pillow and I was sleeping on my side like you're supposed to. And I had the pillow between my legs, like all the way up against my crotch. But what was happening, because the pillow was narrow, is my knees would collapse and touch together.
Oh, yeah. So it didn't keep everything in alignment.
I had to keep everything parallel, and not just my knees, but my ankle, like my feet too. And so what I had, once I figured that out, my chiropractor adjusted me. We talked about it. As soon as I ditched the pregnancy pillow, and I had 5 different normal size pillows, like king size pillows. And I would put them between my legs. So it was all the way from my crotch to my knee to my entire legs were completely parallel. That cleared it up. So it's like, that wasn't the second I felt that, I wasn't like, oh, I'm done. It was like, okay, let me address this. So this is kind of like one of those ones that can balance back and forth. If nothing is working, the running might be making it worse. And if you can't fix it like the way I fixed mine pretty quickly, like it didn't take long for me to figure out what was going on with the help of my chiropractor, I was able to fix it and continue on with what I was doing. But if that's not you, then that might be a red flag for you.
Again, really interesting. I would have thought that a couple things that you deemed as yellow, I would have thought were red. And that's just, I keep saying this, So helpful. Great to know. But it is really interesting. Okay, on to the next thing. What would you tell a mom who is not yet pregnant but wishes to become pregnant and run through her pregnancy? I see a long ass list, so let's get to it.
Yeah. So I would say a lot of things. So first thing on my list.
Real quick, do you need like a water break?
Okay, I'm gonna
Take a water break. I'm
Okay,
sipping,
ready to
even
go.
though I don't need it.
All right. Don't wait until you're pregnant to start working on your pelvic floor. I think there's gonna be two things written on my tombstone. One is gonna be
Oh my god, no, la 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 la.
No, it's not bad.
Oh.
The first is gonna be don't start out too fast in a race, because my athletes know I'm gonna say it to them. And the second is give your pelvic floor some love. And
Yep.
I guess you could make that dirty, but that's not what I mean. You know what I mean. Just like you should not be waiting until you're pregnant. Even men could be working on their pelvic floor. Like, you do not need to wait until you're pregnant to work on your pelvic floor. You do not need to wait until there is an issue to work on your pelvic floor, which I think is typically what happens is like, oh, well, I don't leak. I don't have pain during sex. I don't have any low back pain. I don't have any of the things that check the box of pelvic floor pain or issues. Therefore, I don't work on it, which understandably so. I get that. But that doesn't mean you can't be or shouldn't be working on it. I think it's really good for everybody. Runners do tend to have a hypertonic pelvic floor, which means it's basically too tight. They can't relax it. So one of the things I teach in my courses, and what you will learn if you go to a pelvic floor physical therapist, is that it's not all about how much you can contract it and how hard you can contract it. It's that you need to be able to relax it. Think about when you're in birth, right? One thing, well, when I was going through my training and stuff, one of the analogies that was given to me that I always found really helpful for a visual was to pretend like you had a tube of toothpaste in your body pointing downward, and you have a cap on it. You want to keep that cap on, right? During normal everyday things. You don't want stuff coming out. But when you are pushing out a baby, you need to be able to take that toothpaste cap off and to be able to get it out, right? So you need to be able to relax the muscles enough where you can effectively push baby out and effectively relax for every normal day, things like bowel movements and just urinating and everything. But you need to be able to put the cap back on for other parts of your day. So it's not just about making sure you can contract really hard and do all those things. It's about being able to relax. It is equally as important. And so anyways, don't wait until you're pregnant or wait for there to be an issue for you to actually start working on those things. Second piece of advice would be have a good base going into pregnancy. Again, circling back to the very first thing we talked about, if you want to continue running through your pregnancy, you got to be running before you get pregnant, you know? And I don't have a number in terms of like what that base is going to look like for you, but something is, you know, you got to be running. Second, or another thing is, don't be surprised if you can't run a lot in your first trimester. This is a number one, like this is another big question that I'm asked a lot is, I couldn't really run in my first trimester. Can I pick it back up in my second try? Most likely the answer is yes, you can, especially if you had such a good base going into your pregnancy and then you take like maybe 2 months off of running, or maybe it was like sporadic, because the first trimester for a lot of people can be really rough. I did not run a lot in my first trimester. I think of all 3 of my pregnancies because I was in survival
athletes
mode.
that I work with. Yeah, the athletes that I work with that are pregnant or have been pregnant, it's been the same thing where the first, it's just like, if you can that day, great. But yeah, not like
it's
learning
hard
to not stress about it. Yeah.
It's difficult, or it can be. So, you know, don't freak out if you're like, oh, well, I can't pick it back up. That's not true. So, you know, again, just listening to your body and kind of like just taking things step by step, day by day, and you'll start feeling a lot better in your second trimester, hopefully. Another thing I would tell you is to slow down, especially maybe not so much in your first and even earlier in your second trimester, just because your body, you don't see a ton of physical changes yet in terms of like your belly growing, your hips widening. Relaxin is in your joints from the moment that you conceive. You start to produce this hormone called relaxin, where your joints start to get more lax to basically be able to push baby out. That's the whole idea behind that hormone. So just kind of recognizing that your body is going through changes, even if you don't have a baby bump yet, and just slowing down. The other thing I would tell you is, I used to always say, listen to your body. And I think that that's good advice, but not everyone knows how to listen to their body or what it means when your body is telling you something, which circles me back to the red and the yellow flag. So when your body is trying to tell you something, knowing how to interpret that, or having someone in your corner like a PT or a coach who has experience there, so you can talk to that person about the different experiences that you're having within your body, so you can interpret it to be able to listen to your body.
Yeah.
Okay, a couple other things. Hydrate. It's so important, even if you're not pregnant, but I'm just going to keep saying it because just your body needs to be well oiled. A belly support band can be super helpful. I'm sometimes asked, when should I start wearing a belly band? And my answer to you is whenever you feel like you need it. I have heard some people say, oh, well, I want to prolong wearing it as long as possible, so I'm not dependent on it. And I say, well, you're only pregnant for 9 months. Like, if you need to be dependent on it for 5 months of those, like, that's okay. Like, use it. It is a resource. It is a tool. There are some ones that I recommend. Bao Bay has like a band. It's almost like a sports band for your belly. I always loved those, even postpartum.
You should link it in the show notes too.
Yeah,
in
I
case
can do that.
people are looking for them.
Bao Bay was like, it's just like a big band. It's like, literally their tagline is, it's a sports bra for your belly. And it was always really supportive. And I really liked it postpartum too. And
nice.
Another one is from the Split Belt from Recore Fitness. That one is highly recommended. It's going to help with any of that like pelvic pain that you might be having, or that round ligament pain, which tends to be like kind of shooting pain under your belly, just from growing and everything like that. And that can kind of help with that. Okay, 1, 2, 3 more things. 3 more things.
Yeah,
okay,
and then we have one more question. Yeah.
All right, so forget about pace and time. This can be really hard for a lot of moms to let go of. A lot of runners who, especially in their first pregnancy when they've never done this before, it can be really hard to just let it go. I will say that getting pregnant as a runner, from a runner perspective, was like the best thing that happened to me as a runner, because it showed me that the pace and the time is not everything. It is not all that matters. There's so much more to running than what your watch tells you or what a time tells you. And being able to let that go and just be in the moment and just have fun with it is so much more freeing. And that's what it's about. Your pace will slow down. Your effort will increase. That is okay. That is to be expected. So just letting go of that and just going into pregnancy knowing that is going to help really set yourself up for a better experience. Okay, I'm going to skip that one because I've already talked about it. But there is a quote that I really love from Brianne, a pregnancy and postpartum athlete, and it's intention now, intensity later. And I love it because as athletes, we can have a hard time backing off and just listening to our bodies because we're so used to pushing ourselves, right? And everything has to be hard and intense. And especially as endurance athletes, like we want that burn, we want that pain cave, and we welcome it. But there is intention and intensity. And during pregnancy, you need to have intention with what you're doing. The intensity can come later. So intention now, intensity later. And I remember finding that quote in my third pregnancy because I was doing a lot of CrossFit during my third pregnancy, and which is intense. And I remember when I found that, I was like, okay, I really like that. I can be intense later. I just need to have intention with my movement and my exercise now. The intensity will come later.
I love that.
Yeah, I just thought it was so good. So, and then one other quote, which is my quote that I will leave you with before the last question, is pregnancy running teaches you humility. Postpartum running teaches you patience. So as you are pregnant and your pace is slow down and you forget about it and you let it go, it will teach you how to be humble about paces that maybe you had different thoughts about before you got pregnant, and just be humble about what your body is doing. And then when you're in your postpartum running phase, it's going to teach you how to have patience because you are going to want to get right back to things and you're going to have to learn, nope, I need to be patient. And so have intention and have patience and have some humility, and you will have an all around better experience.
Love it. Okay. Last question. What's one lesson you've learned as a parent or during your conception/pregnancy journey?
I would say that there's no such thing as balance. And I feel like I've said this before.
I feel like this has been like a
just recently.
We've been talking about this like the last couple times you've mentioned it. Yeah.
I always chased what I thought was balance. it was a word that was always thrown around. And I was like, okay, I just need to find balance between working and motherhood and my own training and all this stuff. And I've learned to not like that word because I feel like we're never able to achieve it. And we're constantly feeling like we're coming up short. So I prefer to use the word harmony. Are you in harmony with being a mom and or being pregnant and what life is throwing at you? Are you in harmony with your work, your marriage, your relationships, your running, like all of the things, because it's not just about running. It's not just about one thing. It's about how they all come together, and we want them to be in harmony versus balance. And just, are we in a good place with all of them? And so if you can find that harmony, I think that that's where a lot of times we'll find a lot more happiness with all the different chapters of life as a mom. There's just so many. And this applies to non-parents. Like, just finding that harmony between in your life is going to help just have a better, more like Zen approach to every single day, as opposed to trying to find that balance. And how do you even know that you've arrived at that? And,
Yeah.
always feeling like you're coming up short. So, yeah.
What an amazing thing to end on. This was so informative and so valuable, and we always appreciate you talking about this topic. I hope everyone listening who is tuning in had some good takeaways. And like I've said multiple times, if you have follow-up questions, don't hesitate to reach out to us. But thank you, Christine, for sharing all of your knowledge and on the last like two parts of this series. And this is the last part too, I guess. But we appreciate you guys for tuning in. Like Christine said at the beginning of the episode, you can check out the show notes to learn more about what we offer at Relentless Runners from a coaching perspective. You can follow Christine and myself over on social media. We'll link those in the show notes as well. And we cannot wait to see you guys next week.